Hi, Jacqueline with the Fable Tree here. This week we are turning a snowflake that we've made in a different tutorial, I'll link it below, into a split monogram. So this will let you customize these snowflakes for your customers. You can make door hangers, or even if you want to make them kind of small, you can make them into ornaments. All right, so definitely check out that tutorial first, and then once you have a snowflake that you really love, copy paste it into a new document like this. All right, so this is pretty small because I made it ornament sized before. And I'm just going to zoom in for now. And what we want is a nice clean line that goes straight across, okay? And you'll see that the arms of my snowflakes are not straight across. So we're just going to hover around the edge here. And you'll want to hover at one of these little points and until the little bent arrow pops up. Click, and that'll allow you to rotate it. All right, and you want to rotate it until it is just perfect, okay? And if you don't know if it's exactly just perfect, mine is not, that's okay. Just come over to the properties panel. You'll see this rotate button and just round it off to the nearest thing, right? So mine is at 331 point something, so I'm just going to do 330, and then I can be pretty sure that it's nice and split across. Okay, so how do we split our snowflake? Well, there are lots of methods, but the one that I find easiest is to just click it. Let's go ahead and swap the fill and stroke so it has a fill and no stroke. All right, you see the red slash there. And then we're going to create a rectangle. And I'm going to start it. If you've got your smart guides on, you'll be able to see that this is precisely in the middle of that horizontal line, which is exactly what I want. You can make a different decision if you prefer it split somewhere else. So I'm going to click and drag right across, and then I'm going to click and select both of these, come over to our Pathfinders panel, and click to minus front. You'll want to make sure that your rectangle is right on top. Now, the reason I said earlier that you could adjust if you didn't want it to be split right in half is because you might like the look of the full line rather than just half of the line, since this is a little bit different than the arms of the snowflake. So up to you. I'm happy with this, so I'm not worried about it. And then we'll just click, we'll copy. So Command C on a Mac, Control C on a PC, and then paste. So Command or Control V. And then I'm going to come over here to my properties panel and flip vertically. Right? If you don't have this up for whatever reason, you can go to Object, Transform, Reflect, and do it that way. All right? And I'm just going to scoot it down like this, and you'll see already that we have a lovely spot to add a name. Okay? So right now, we're going to just select everything, come over to your Align panel, and do a horizontal align center to make sure it's nice and horizontally aligned. If you don't have that panel, Object, Align, Horizontal Align Center. We'll do the same thing. Okay, now you want to add your name. So I'm going to just use the name of some friends of ours because I'm terrible at coming up with names on the spot. So we're going to do the Nopers, and we are going to select a different font. Okay, we're going to use, oh, that's pretty. We're going to use Romantic Serif, and just make it larger. Not that large, make it smaller. And you want it to fit pretty nicely within the borders of your snowflake here, but we're not done. Okay, so this is, you can see quite a thin font, or it's a font that has some really thin spots. So we'll address that in a moment. Right now, I want to dive into the glyphs. So come over, make sure you've got your type tool selected, and I'm going to just delete that T. This font has some really beautiful glyphs, which is why I love it so much. And if you go to type glyphs, it'll pull up all of your options. And I'm going to do a kind of exciting T. Ooh, look at that. Lovely. And so then I'll do the same thing with the N to just give it some excitement here. And we're just going to go with the most extra N that they have. Okay? You can make it a different decision if you'd like. All right, so once you have your glyphs chosen and you like how everything looks, go ahead and select it, then right-click to create your outlines, and just for good measure, go ahead to your Pathfinder panel and Unite. Now, if you're using a script font, this is not optional. If you're using a non-script font like I am, it's usually optional, but I always like to do it in case there's something that overlaps that I didn't notice, all right? Now, again, let's address this these little parts that are way too thin. If you try to cut that on your laser, it will just burn to a crisp, to be honest. So the way that you can address this is to click it, go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and bulk it up a little. So let's try a 0.03 and see it. Ooh, too bulky. Let's try a 0.02. Now that's looking a little nicer. Now, you might be a little disappointed when you first see it of how bulky it is. In fact, I'm going to undo that. It's still too bulky. Maybe a 0.01. Yeah, that's nice. And so you might say, oh no, now those beautiful thin lines aren't there anymore. Well, you're right, they're not. But when you go to your laser and cut out your design, the laser actually removes material as it cuts, okay? It's not slicing like a knife would, it burns material away, okay? And even with a blade, you lose material. It's called kerf, okay? So it'll actually end up looking a little thinner than it does right here. Okay, so once you've got your offset path added, you'll notice that if you zoom in, you've got your original path and your offset path. So you want to just make sure both are selected, and you can come to Pathfinder, click to unite, and then you're good to go, okay? Now, we need to attach our name to our snowflake. And this is optional if you do the backing that I add in just a minute, but I think it's important. So especially if you want to do a snowflake name with no backer, okay? So what you want to do here is make sure that all of your letters are touching at least one of these halves, okay? So we have here our giant N, and I'm just going to scooch all of this down until there's just the slightest bit of overlap with the bottom of the snowflake, okay? And you don't need to worry so much if every single letter aligns with the top, although you do want some of the letters to align with the top, okay? So you can move this around until you're happy with it. I'm going to make this whole name just a little bit smaller. Let's see here, because I want it to be well within the borders of this. I'm not going to horizontally align center the name simply because this giant swash on the T is going to kind of visually unbalance things. So I'm just going to eyeball that. And then once I'm happy with the placement, stoop. I'm going to scooch this down a little bit. We just really want to make sure that you're happy with the amount of space above these letters here, okay? You want to make sure that it looks nice and balanced and that you'll be happy with it, okay? So once you're happy with everything and it's all aligned to your satisfaction, select it all and Pathfinder Unite, okay? Now for me, it's not a problem that these little swishy parts go up into the snowflake. If it is a problem for you, just don't use the really exciting T and N, use all of the basic ones, and then you'll have a much more sort of even snowflake look, all right? Once you're finished with that, go ahead and swap your fill and stroke. This will also allow you to get a sense for if anything is going to cut that shouldn't be cutting, and you are good to go. Now, here's an optional step that you can take. First of all, we're gonna just make this, well, we'll do that at the end. So another thing that you can do, if you want, is to add a backing layer. All right, and that's what I did in my sample project. So you're going to just do this, select it, go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and let's try maybe a 1/4 inch offset. I think that looks pretty good. You could do maybe a 0.2 inch. Just do it to where you like the shape of this outline part. Okay, and don't worry about this little spike here. I'll show you how to get rid of that in just a second because you're always going to have like a little, or you might always have a little strangeness. Okay, I like this. So I'm going to leave it like that. And now let's take care of the spike before we go any further because it is a little silly looking. It shouldn't be there. We're going to use the direct selection tool, select this random anchor, and come up to this remove selected anchor points button. All right, and that's fine with me. Okay, now I am going to select this whole thing and turn it to a 6-inch size. Just because I think that'll be a nice little shelf sitter. If you're doing a door hanger, you want it to be much larger, maybe a 10-inch. If you are doing an ornament, think about a 3.5 or a 4-inch. Okay, so think about what you're doing and how you'll use it and decide on your size. Now I am going to just copy paste this part because this will be my cutout layer. And then I want to score this design into the backing so that I can place my snowflake without any guesswork because I'm terrible at eyeballing things. So object, path, offset path, this is such an important, exciting tool. So negative, this time you want a negative offset, and that means that your score lines will be hidden by this cutout layer at the end, okay? And since this is a pretty small size, I won't do my typical negative 0.04. Instead, I'll probably try a negative 0.03, and that looks like it will be useful. Now, before you click anything, all right, you can go ahead and change your stroke color to whatever you use to indicate a stroke, but any other color to differentiate it in the Glowforge app from a cut line. And then just copy, so Command-C or Control-C. And if you are really good, you can zoom in and select this black part and just delete it. And if you accidentally also delete the green part, that's okay. You copied it and you would just go edit, paste in place. Okay, so now you have two layers. You have this layer, which has a cutout and score lines, and you have this layer, which will glue on top of that. I highly recommend that you back whatever material you're cutting this from with 3M adhesive before you cut, and that way it's peel and stick and you don't have to worry about glue seepage or any other struggle issues that way. Again, if you haven't watched the Snowflake tutorial yet, I am linking it in the description, so make sure that you go watch that and make your snowflake before you even start here, and then take it away. All right, I would love to see what you make with this tutorial. You can tag me on Instagram at thefabletree or email it to me, Jacqueline@thefabletree.com. All right, I'll see you next week.